My name is Conor McGuigan. I'm the Director of Business Development at Lightsource Renewable Energy. I'm just going to sort of give you a brief introduction of who Lightsource are for those who don't know. Is it down? Up. There we go. Lightsource basically had humble beginnings like everyone else, probably back in November 2010. We're coming up to our 3rd year anniversary in a few weeks' time. And I say humble beginnings, there were 6 of us who moved into an office, looking at each other and asking, what do we do now? We moved into Octopus's offices, and Octopus is going to be a running theme throughout this presentation. They're our fund and basically stand behind everything that we do, and I wouldn't be here, obviously, without them, given they're the ones who write the checks, which is very kind of them. Basically, what we've got in the market share at the moment is, and I have to pinch myself sometimes, is probably quite incredible in terms of got over 316. It's probably something like 320 megawatts of operational assets, and we're hoping to add another 400 megawatts by next March. So you're wondering probably why I'm here. I should be actually closing deals, and I think some of the MAP bonus deals that you're talking about this week are probably some of ours as well. And that's probably the same throughout the country. So we've got a team now of 160 people, which is a massive increase from where we started actually with 6 people. And the reason for that is twofold, basically. I think, number one, we wanted to do everything in-house. We didn't want to wait on someone else putting us at the bottom of the pile and having to chase people. And that has worked for us no end. It probably doesn't work for everybody, but it's a model that has worked for Lightsource very, very well. It also then gives us a unique place in the market, I think, because I don't think anyone else has maybe that amount of people in any of the companies in solar in the UK. So it gives us a drive and determination. Obviously, a lot of mouths to feed as well. So we have to do more and more every year, which is a big stick to beat us with. But it is something that has worked, and it is something that's probably led from our CEO, a guy called Nick Boyle, who maybe some of you probably already know, who's quite forward-thinking and is the one who's established this company way back. I think it was April when the feed-in tariff first came out. We own 46% of the UK market. I think that's stats. I'm not sure, obviously, from what David has said, if they're accurate or not, but we own quite a substantial amount of the market. And I think and I talk about humble beginnings, I think from my perspective, it all started off like everybody else, going great guns, developing our own projects. And then obviously the 7th of February came 2011. And like everyone else in the market, we went out and got royally drunk and thought that the game was over. Came back in the next day, war room, sat with Octopus and said, listen, what do we do now? And I had to shelve something in the region of £250,000 in the bin of all the developments that we had actually got ready to lodge in the planning. And luckily for us, and I think right place to right time, but the unique place that got us where we are, and probably where we are today, is the fact that Octopus said, listen, the money's there, go out and do it. So where everyone else, I think, had found sites, we stupidly at the time, we were thinking, what have we done with no sites? But and actually, every cloud has a silver lining. We had the money. So what we essentially did was out and then cherry-picked 14 developments. It was as simple as that. I think there was maybe 13, 14 people at that time. I project managed one of the sites. Nick was busy down with the screwdriver in hand. Everyone just was manned the pumps. And we actually got 36 megawatts built by the 1st of August 2011. So that automatically was half the market share, I think, and that's what's put us in the place we are today. The clever thing, I think, has been maintaining that for Lightsource. You know, I would say we were very fortunate to get the 36 in the first place, but we did, and it's great. But I think we've maintained that market share ever since, and that has been the difficult thing. And as I say, part of that has been our whole USB in terms of what do we do. We want everyone in-house to deliver what we need to deliver year on year. And as I say, if I do 400 megawatts by March next year, I know Nick's going to come back and ask me to do 600 the year after. And I think the UK is something that can actually sustain that, and maybe we get on to that later on, but I think it is a buoyant market, and I think it's great, and I think it will continue at least for the next 10 years, and that's what I'm hoping. These are our sites, and no prizes for guessing where most of the sites are. A lot of them are obviously located down in the southwest. There's issues now why, you can see why we're actually moving further north, because the grid is a determinant factor now in looking at large-scale solar. Planning also is getting more difficult, but I think definitely grid capacity. I think, David, you were mentioning that you're probably going to have problems in the southwest. I think we've already had problems in the southwest. I think we had those problems last year. So you probably find less and less applications being in Cornwall. As I say, I think there was a conference today in Scotland where one of my colleagues has just come back from, and it shows you maybe the appetite of where people are actually going. If you reduce rent, you can obviously go further north. We've an office in Belfast as well, not least because I can get home and see my family every now and again. And Nick's also from Northern Ireland, but we just submitted our first plan application last week in the Northern Ireland. And again, it's what you're basically doing in terms of our model is just reducing rent. The radiance is lower, but it still comes out in terms of the model, so it still works. The difficulties with Northern Ireland and other regimes, basically, they're slightly different from planning purposes. You can't get your grid application approved until you have your planning permission in your hand. So where timing here is maybe 6 to 9 months, it's probably 15 months to 24 months there. So you have to sort of put that into your model to make it work. We've also got a portfolio in France. We've got 66 roofs, 17 megawatts. And again, that was more for us to sort of dip our toe into international waters. We've got 24 different nationalities within our company, from an Armenian to Zimbabwean. And I think Nick Boyle now is trying to get the 25th, so it's becoming a running joke. But the reason for that is to get the expertise that we physically need. Coming from Northern Ireland, that big yellow thing in the sky doesn't always appear. And it doesn't that much in the UK either. I think in Cornwall, of all the times I've been down, I think it's been sunny twice. So you wonder why we're actually in this business. The French portfolio is great. What we would also be looking to do is look further afield and look at the States, look at Japan. I think they're growing markets that we're definitely interested in. And I think they're probably hotting up for a lot of the developers and EPCs that I speak to. I'm showing you this for those who don't know what a solar park looks like. This is the perfect site. I would ask somebody who can get a better one. For an EPC's purposes, this is rectangle. It was easy to build. This was Wilburton. We did this in 6 weeks through Solar Century. And this is one of the 2011 before the 1st of August. But I don't think we've got a better site, to tell you the truth. And just in terms of how flat it was, you can't see it from the road. The road's 300 metres away. And the taxi driver taking me to it even last week, I had to do an interview. He didn't know it was there, and he lives in the area. So prime site. But these things are few and far between. I would struggle, even with our 76 large-scale sites, to get a better one than that. And that's the reason I'm showing you. I'm quite proud of it. But there are sites out there like this. There are more brownfield sites out there like this that people should be looking to put their plants on. I talk about stable growth. And basically where we want to go. And I sort of ask myself, and we interview a lot of people a lot of the times, and they're basically saying, so where are we going to go in 5 years' time? Should I come and join Lightsource, or should I get into the solar market? What I basically have to say to them is, at the time, despite all of the problems that we've actually got, and there's been a lot of those. I've been here 3 years, and it feels like a lifetime. It has been a roller coaster, not least because we're sort of running towards targets, and it's quite cyclic in terms of what we have to do. But the one constant thing that I basically tell people is the one constant that we've always known is the subsidies are going to reduce year on year. That's basically what they do. So there's no surprises there. They just were maybe brought about quite sooner than we actually thought. So, we've taken that on board. You were asking, David, in terms of the 1.4 market, we're ready. I've got 3 people over the last 3 months have been working on 1.4 projects. And we think we're probably 10 months, or at least 3 months, basically into that 12-month period of 1.4. You need to be establishing those pipelines now, getting those plan applications ready, and to get it in. It's probably a 9-month lead from shaking a hand to a farmer to actually then plugging it in. So if you want a pipeline of 1.4, you should have started already. That's my advice. 1.6, if you haven't got planning at this moment in time, you're probably going to struggle, I would have thought, to get it connected by 31st of March. We connected 38 plants in the last 3 weeks of March last year, and a lot to do with WPD bent over backwards. But they've even said to us, guys, don't ever ask us to do this much again. And I think already I can see that that's where the industry's going. We sort of have a deadline of 31st of March, and everyone is going to be building in the first quarter. Probably we weren't helped, obviously, with the anti-dumping subsidies, and obviously that cooled down the whole market, particularly with us. Lightsource, given what we have and given the funds behind us, one of the sort of, again, the key points for us, that we can go in and buy modules a lot cheaper than most other people because we're buying 200 megawatts, 100 megawatts. Now we're the same. Person buying a megawatt on the street can get it the same price as us. So there are difficulties, and it doesn't particularly be fair in sort of a market economy, but that is where we are. You just have to bend, adapt, and that's, I think, what the solar market is very good at doing. And has done over the last 3 years, and I can't see that changing. To be fair, it works at 1.4. I know people are concerned about it, but it does work. And I think you're just you're hitting margins, you're hitting rents. There's a lot of things you can physically do to make a site work. The rental figures haven't reduced significantly, I don't think, from 2 rocks to 1.6, where I think they should have. But again, I think developers out there offering rental figures just to get an application or to get a pipeline built up, and I think we have to be careful about that. The 1.4 to work, I think you really need to be looking at 750, 650 types of rental figures and not be offering £1,000, 1,100. Today, somebody brought me one with, I think it was £1,400 or £1,500 an acre for 1.6, and it just killed my model just straight out. So rent has a huge bearing in terms of the financial model and the viability, from my perspective, of a project. This shows you obviously the growth, and it's probably no surprise to anybody else what we've actually physically done. And again, it is an amazing sort of turn of events from where we started to where the market is physically going. I can see that. I can see it being sustained. I can't see it growing much more in terms of the volume year on year, but definitely I think this is going to be something that we can physically now sustain. We did, I think, 47 applications in total, not all of ours, but 38 of them were ours. And we're probably going to do the similar amount this year. So already from 2010 to where we are now, the last 2 years, we've done about the same amount of applications. The difference has been we've done more megawatts, but we've done the same amount of projects. And I think that's something that we can physically sustain. And I think, like, from other competitors, talking to them, it's something that they think is going to happen as well. This is the graph, not produced by ourselves, but it's interesting in terms of, obviously, domestic still has the market share. But I think we're obviously catching up in them, and I can see that being significantly different next year if we look at it by that stage. The interesting one for me there is the 7% of non-residential large-scale rooftop. And I agree, there's a huge market to be had in roofs. Greg Barker, is directing us to that. The ROC subsidies indicate that you should be looking at roofs too. That's where everything's targeted. The difficulty with that is obviously the counterparty, the bankability, going to landowners, not tenants, and that is the problem. I've got a team of 3 who just solely do PPAs, and we've done one, basically. We've done Bentley roof, albeit it was a massive roof. It was 5.3 megawatts we got on it. But that's what they've been doing in a year. Now, there are other projects that they're looking at, but there's a lot of spinning wheels. There's a lot of things out there. It's probably going to be next year before any of those are come through. And you're not going to get another counterparty, or very few counterparties like Bentley. So I think that's where the difficulty lies. Yes, we would love to get into the market, and I'm sure other people would too, but the refinancing, and it's the realities of obviously the world that we live in, particularly us as Lightsource Octopus, we need to refinance at some stage. We don't do it at the start of any of our deals. We're sort of fleet of foot, got our own debt and our own equity, but at some stage we would like to refinance, and it's just, if you haven't got a reasonable counterparty, you haven't got a chance, essentially. And I think that needs to be changed. And to that end, I think even Nick has been speaking to Greg Barker on a number of occasions. I know at the Cornwall conference that we've been down to, Greg Barker referred to it, and there's a few questions then pitched to him from the audience, and he said he would look into it, because it really is, I think it's a huge growth area, but also it's got huge problems. Where if you offered me a roof or a ground mount, I'd go for ground mount every time. It's just easier, simpler, the lease is easier. Decommissioned ones, you can just take it off. Where roofs, you've got obviously what happens if they go bust, insolvent, what happens if there's fire. There's a number of things you just need to sort out. I've talked about Octopus a number of times. There's a number of points there. I think for simply this slide is just saying to who Octopus are. It's a retail-based fund. They're a massive company, but also a very young company, only 11 years. The CEO of Octopus, I think, is 38 years of age, Simon Rogerson. So it's a very young, dynamic company. What we've done with them, purely in solar, is I think we're nearly 600 million. We're not far off it. I put that in. I think it was 500 earlier, but it's probably 580, 590. We've spent in terms of over the last, and it's been probably the last 2 years, not the last 3. Which been, and again, it shows you the commitment that obviously Octopus have into solar, and they wouldn't be doing it if it didn't work. The retail fund that we have, they've got a retail-based fund is brilliant for us, but obviously it's very difficult to do. They've got 50,000 investors. The average age of the investor is 58 years of age. The average spend is £19,000 they put into investments. So it's not huge city fat cats writing checks for millions of pounds. It is Mr. and Mrs. Smith looking for a tax incentive in terms of the monies that they use. And I think we just need to be more responsible. There's definitely developers out there that are putting these things in weird and wonderful places. And yes, it's great. You've got a permission at the end of the day, but there's definitely a lobbying group out there that are trying to stem the flow of these sites. Grid, for me, I'm a planner from background, as you can probably tell. Grid is the dark arts, but it's a necessity that we have. To that end, we've got about 3 grid experts just in the company working on these. What I'm finding also, we talked about the Southwest, but it's UK, PN East as well, South England, Wales. We're having problems throughout the UK on grid. I think what that basically tells us is the grid infrastructure is just generally poor wherever you go. We're having problems with interconnectivities, reactive powers, intertripping, for those people who know what that is. And hot sites is the buzzword now in my office, where the resistivity of the ground level needs so much copper on it to earth the site that it just makes the site unviable. So all of these things are coming into play to make what we do generally difficult, and we just have to get smarter and better at it. To round up, basically, and I know you're winding your fingers, so I'm going to be finished very soon, is there are strong pipelines out there. So on a higher note, I think everyone I meet has a 100 megawatt pipeline, which is amazing, but everyone simply does. Seems to be the magic figure. I haven't seen too many of them, but apparently they all have them, and they all come and speak to me. But there are opportunities out there. We know there's pipelines out there. We know there's a lot of land out there. And as I say, we think it's going to continue at least for the next 10 years on a very sound and solid basis. And all I can say is, as I hope it does, for my family's sake, and we live in London. But these are just to finish off and say thank you, show you some of the pictures that we did in 2012, all 5 megawatt sites. And again, if I'm standing here next year, you'll probably see that these will probably be 8, 10, 15 megawatt sites, because I think where people are going basically is slightly bigger, not to the degree of 50, 100 megawatts, but definitely the average size of a site now is about 8 to 12 megawatts. So guys, thank you very much for listening to me rambling on, and I hope I can speak to some of you later on. Okay, thank you.